Now we're going to talk about a couple of formulas that are useful in the Cartesian plane. One of them is basically the Pythagorean theorem if you look at it the right way, but this gives us the distance formula. If we have 2 points, and these are just labels, but let's say we've got the point x1, y1 and the point x2, y2, and we want to find the distance between them, well, you could always create a right triangle, and the side lengths would wind up being y2 minus y1, the absolute value of that, whichever one's larger. You would want to get the positive value when you subtract. And the other side would be the difference between x2 and x1. Again, take the absolute value to make sure that it's positive. But by the Pythagorean theorem, that means that x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared would be the distance squared. Or in other words, you get the distance formula. The distance is the square root of the difference in the x's squared plus the difference in the y's squared. So we'll do a quick example of that. So find the distance between the points -1, 2, and 5, 10. So we just take our distance formula and plug our numbers in here. We're going to do the square root of the difference in the x's squared. So that'd be 5 minus -1 squared, or -1 minus 5 squared. Either way, you're going to get -6 squared, or 6 squared on the next step. And then you've got 10 minus 2, or 2 minus 10 squared. Because you're squaring, if you change the order here of the x's or the y's, you want to do x minus x and y minus y, but if you change the order between them, you'll just get the opposite sign and you're going to square it anyway. Okay, but the difference in my x's is 6. We square that, and the difference in my y's is 8. So we get the square root of 6 squared plus 8 squared, which winds up being exactly 10. The square root of 36 plus 64, or the square root of 100, which is 10. So the distance between those 2 points is 10. Usually when you do the distance formula, along with that, you talk about the midpoint formula. And if you have 2 points and you think about the segment connecting them and you want to find the midpoint of that, or you're trying to find the point that's halfway between the two, we call that the midpoint. To get there, you just have to average in each direction. You average the x's and average the y's to get the point that's in the middle. You want to be in the middle in the x direction, so you average x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then you want to average in the y direction, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So again, a quick example. Find the midpoint of the segment between -1, 2 and 5, 10. So we just use our formula, average our x's, -1 plus 5 divided by 2. And then for the new y coordinate, average the y's, 2 plus 10 divided by 2, which is going to give you 4 halves and 12 halves, or 2, 6, the point 2, 6. Okay, one other thing in this short section we're going to look at here, the equation of a circle basically comes from the distance formula. If you think about it, how would you define a circle? Okay, most people know what a circle is kind of intuitively, but if you want to define it, one way to do that is that you have a certain center, which we could call anything, but most books for some reason like to use HK for the center of the circle. And then you have some radius r, which is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. And the circle's all the points that lie that distance away from the center. Okay? And if we think of taking the center HK and an arbitrary point xy on the circle, then by the distance formula, the square root of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared would equal r. Okay? Or x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared is the standard formula you see for a circle. Okay? So the equation of a circle, if you know the center and you know the radius, is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, if we square both sides of the distance formula here. So one problem we can do here, you could be given the center and a point on the circle. This time we're given 2 points, and it's important that it says they lie at the ends of a diameter. That means the center is actually the midpoint between them. Okay? A diameter is a line, or a line segment through the circle that contains endpoints in the center. Okay? It's twice the radius of the circle. So find an equation for the circle with the points 1, 1 and 7, 3 lying at the ends of a diameter. So we need the center, we need the radius. We're going to use both of our formulas. This is a nice application because it uses both of the formulas. The midpoint formula will give us the center, and then we could do the distance between our 2 points, or we could do the distance from either of the points to the center, okay, to try and figure out what the radius is. So let's see. So our center, we find the midpoint, so we average the x's and the y's. We do 1 plus 7 divided by 2 for the x's, and 1 plus 3 divided by 2 to get our y coordinate. So that's going to give me 8 halves, or 4, for the x coordinate, and 4 halves, or 2, for the y coordinate. So our center is 4, 2. I decided to go ahead and find the distance between the 2 points, which would be twice the radius, or the diameter. So 2r will be the square root of the difference in my x's squared, 7 minus 1 squared, plus the difference in the y squared, 3 minus 1 squared. Okay? So 2r comes out to be 6 squared plus 2 squared, or 36 plus 4 underneath the radical. So we get 2r is the square root of 40. I can go ahead and divide and get my radius as square root of 40 over 2. We could simplify that, but we need to square it anyway. We need to do x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So r squared, if we square top and bottom there, would be 40 over 4, or 10. So equation of our circle is x minus the x coordinate of the center squared plus y minus the y coordinate of the center, which is 2 squared, equals 10. So our circle is x minus 4 quantity squared plus y minus 2 quantity squared equals 10.